systems. So for a while, I just
But your wife
let
works
it
for next
fizzle
media.
out.
No, my wife wants
Just a headache
Oh,
to track off.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, that's why do you use like social media
So,
platforms or?
very interesting. I know a lot about next media, and I know,
I think we kind of
Me, like,
yeah,
then my sister, what is helps. Or,
yeah.
yes, are you?
Well, we were
helping,
talking to,
companies manage their content?
Mark Simon.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
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 Nice to meet you.
I'm a TV reporter.
And we had these really great talks.
Yeah.
We wanted to do something.
Voice TV.
Actually, now, not a year ago.
Yes.
During the talks began before all the restructuring in life, and then I heard like people got laid off, and then so yeah. I think there was some stuff that happened. Yeah.
So yeah, but my Chinese, so basically, I do the animal.
Some of them.
Yeah.
So it's good. I don't know too much about it.
Yeah, I haven't heard a lot, but I've read.
Purely because of, I mean, one of the biggest problems I
There's
have.
a couple of news, like 24 hours news. So like CNBC, yeah, like no, more like pretty much like China Asia, like serious news, yeah, serious news.
Yeah. So they have
So that I do technology or
help with pure animation, not
so Apple.
because
Yeah,
basically
I'm basically writing mostly the stuff that's the FBI. So maybe we should get a thing and you can start first following these meetings on the live stream.
Yeah.
And that's why.
Yeah, those
Are they, is next media overall losing money?
No, I mean, the thing is the animation.
Yeah, coffee, right there, just
Yeah.
pour yourself a cup and,
The animation companies.
Your coffee's really strong.
yeah, it's good. That's good, that's good.
That's good, isn't it?
Yeah, that's good, that's good.
On a Saturday
Yeah,
morning.
Any morning.
It's actually
Too much partying last night, right?
I just looking at it.
Really?
Yeah, really, no, really, really.
Oh.
I speak to my developers more than I speak to them. That's a joke. He's like, yeah, get this stuff. Here's the things.
in Taiwan, they've got next Apple Day,
Yeah.
in both markets.
So how did you go? Yeah. Where you
So
go?
how is your book?
Oh my gosh.
I make a lot of English.
Oh, you know the announcement out there.
Yeah, it's not first way.
Actually, why not? But I think because this time we did a lot of coffee. Because there was a coffee guy here. And then
Let me
to end
get
this
some more
little
coffee and bring it
text.
out here. Excuse me, Chelsea, I'll just get more coffee.
Okay,
So.
great.
Yeah, no, I got more. I'm back. Let me just, I was thinking, you were saying I could sit in the corner, but let me just get more coffee. Yeah, IBM, the Watson, team, they have a lot of data.
Yeah, so then I spoke to that.
My technical skills aren't that
Appreciate
so
you.
I can't like get those jobs.
Because
And
I think he's gone a bit.
combining military and learning skills.
And
So glad I'm off.
Yeah, so
who were you originally?
Yeah, well,
from
So
but grew up in the US.
my life was full of flowers.
More US than Korea.
Was it?
Well, I think,
Depends on what
I lived in Korea for 6 months.
Really?
Yeah, correct. So I was there actually.
I know.
That's the reason why I
That's how we do it.
So I was
Okay.
for a very long time. And after that, my fiance was there. So I think we looked at food. So it was like, okay.
Yeah, but these days, that was like, your website, yes, also something. So I went online research, and it was like, well, it was like,
Yeah, I think this is better.
And I was like, where are all the information is it? You know, there are many times I found the information for that way there. I'm so busy. So I decided, screw it.
So yeah, I'm ready.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay, we're ready when you are. Hey guys, we're about to start.
Should I sit here? I'll give you 80,000.
Alright, so
I just
maybe
decided
we
to
should
put it.
Yeah.
a bit lower, right? So,
That's
okay.
safer. I'm a little bit worried about it.
It's already live.
Oh, hey Dylan. Hi.
But 0 viewers. It's
It's
okay. I guess we want to record this.
You can sit here. Just know that you're in the screenshot.
Oh, no, I'm gonna sit here.
Yeah, he's the one.
Maybe
Okay.
just a little bit more center because I just changed the
Okay, so we can,
camera position. It's,
Alright.
it's already recorded.
it's already recorded, so we good, right?
Yep.
Alright, so I just want to say, thank you everyone for making it here, for taking time out of your Saturday morning to join us. And I want to thank you, Coconuts Media and Byron for making this time. As you guys know, I just want to, since he's giving us just a very brief introduction, but I'll let him do more later. So, like a few of us here, we were journalists, newspaper and media journalists. And Byron is one, he was a former newspaper magazine journalist, who's really made a successful transition into media startups and entrepreneurship. So I think that's pretty, and we've seen what Coconuts has done just, the past few years. It's amazing. It started in 2011, and now it has more than 4 million unique monthly visitors, which is amazing. So before I hand it over to Byron, just want to do a little brief introduction about AAJA as well. Congrats, we have a new member here, Richard, today. We signed up. So welcome to the family, Richard. For those of you, we have also a few members here like Aran, Dylan, and Mike all came all the way from Bangkok. So he runs the sub-chapter there. So doing what we're doing here. And we're gonna have a sort of a Southeast Asia chapter coming very soon, where we will have more of this collaboration. We have Wendy from Beijing, and hopefully Taehyung's gonna join us from Seoul on Google Hangout. So if we do more of this, we can have our regional members to join us too as well. So as at AAJA, I'm sorry for those who heard me say this many times, but we try to promote diversity in media coverage, and also to organize, lots of to organize workshops and talks like this that will help to equip and train members. And we have yearly annual conferences. We have a regional one that will be in Seoul this year in May 27th to 29th, so save the date. And then we have our national conference, which is in the States. So I don't want to go on too long about this. If you're interested to find out more, you can talk to myself or any one of the members here. There's some pamphlets that I've left there, find out more. And now I'll pass the time to Byron.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. I think what I'm planning on doing is just having a very informal chat, and anybody feel free to interrupt me with questions at any time, and or at the end we can also kind of have a question session if you have any questions. So yeah, to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. And I went to Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and immediately after graduating went into media. I worked first at San Francisco Magazine, which is a glossy city magazine for San Francisco. There I was a fact checker, basically, and so it was a very great introduction to journalism and media and reporting. I would be given something like a 5,000 to 8,000 word feature story that would be printed out with every single fact underlined. And I would go through and you had to cross out every single word and every single fact. And you would do things like call people and say, were you wearing a red shirt on that day? Did you say this? and use encyclopedias and obviously a lot of web research to confirm facts, names, and figures. So welcome.
Hi.
Sorry, we're running. So yeah, I worked at San Francisco Magazine for a little bit over a year as a fact checker. Was able to do a little bit of writing and definitely discovered that I loved media and journalism and writing. From there, I went to Variety, which is the entertainment industry trade magazine in Los Angeles. Very much a Hollywood daily print Bible of sorts, where you're mainly the type of stories that appear there are this director has signed on to this movie, or this actor has signed on to this movie. Is very much a trade publication, not so much hard journalism per se, and very much puffing up the industry constantly. But I think that was a really good experience because I learned about copy editing and the print aspect of putting together a paper and printing it every single day. I actually got laid off of Variety, and that was how I ended up moving out to Asia. I was laid off in 2008. They cut something like 30% of their workforce. They ended up cutting even more. They cut their print publication, and actually they're doing much better now with their website. But that was the impetus for me to go to Asia. I got a severance package and traveled around the world a little bit to go try and work abroad as a journalist. So I worked at the Phnom Penh Post in Cambodia first. There I was a reporter. And basically in Siem Reap, Cambodia, would ride my bicycle around as the only reporter in this small little bureau, which is basically a guy's living room for the Phnom Penh Post, which is the main English language newspaper of Cambodia, and go and write stories, which could range from something about a new cupcake shop or a new bakery or a new restaurant to a very hardcore and serious story about, for example, the Raffles Hotel GM, while I was there, was arrested for molesting children. And so I visited him in jail, and he had supposedly been living with and paying the families of a few young boys. So that was extremely serious, but it was a really great experience for me, and kind of led to starting Coconuts because there was a huge wide range of what I would do. One day it's like, okay, there's a new cupcake shop opening. The next day it's like, you gotta go to jail and interview the possible child molester. So I left there to work at Ensign Media, which is another trade magazine, property oriented. They do property reports Southeast Asia. And at that magazine, I probably had the most responsibility that I had ever had in my professional career, where I was basically responsible for all of the editing, the printing, even working with the advertising. Come on in, yeah. For a monthly magazine. And so it was there that I decided that I think I can do this about something which I'm really interested in. Property was not necessarily my most burning interest. And so I left that to start Coconuts Bangkok, which the original idea is what it is still today, a local city website that covered everything that was happening in this massive, crazy, never boring city where there's an endless supply of interesting things happening, to try and cover that from a very local perspective, not national news, not international, keeping it very, very local to this one massive city that has 20 million people and that has more than enough, news and content to fill, we could do much more stories than we do. And so I did that. I basically bootstrapped it myself for about a year and on minimal expenses, and was writing most of the content myself. And so yeah, I am a writer and a journalist originally. And was able to secure a small amount of funding to expand Coconuts to other cities. We launched in Manila next in late 2012. And the idea there was that Manila, in Bangkok, we would always be limited to being not necessarily an expat publication, because I never wanted to be defined as that, but the majority of people in Thailand and Bangkok obviously speak Thai. So we were for a segment of the population that was mainly expats and international people and English-speaking Thais, which was not a large segment. And so if we ever wanted to become something bigger, the way that I saw to expand was to launch in other cities. And Manila also has 20 million people, also a massive city with lots of very interesting things happening, and English speaking. So in theory, the potential for audience there was much bigger. So we launched in Manila next, and then we were able to raise a little bit more money, and we launched in Singapore and Hong Kong 1 year later, in late 2013. And since then, we have now launched in a total of 8 cities. We're in Bangkok, Manila, Singapore, Hong Kong, KL, Jakarta, Bali, and Yangon. And also earlier in 2015, we launched our first 2 local language city websites. So everything has been in English until we launched these 2 sites. We launched Coconuts Cream Tech, which is in Thai for Bangkok, and Coconuts Indonesia, which is in Bahasa, Indonesia. And it's actually not a local city website, it's more Indonesia-wide. About in 2013, and what has now become even more important, and what I really want to invest in more, and I think is going to become more important for the future, we began to focus on video. And so our video brand is Coconuts TV. That's the name of our YouTube channel. We have a website for Coconuts TV. We produce short videos that really fall under a wide range of content verticals: news, food, travel, art, but with the main bread and butter being documentaries, short documentaries, anywhere from 1 minute to 30 minutes. The longest video we ever did was produced by me and was called Sumatra Burning. It was about the haze in Indonesia. And that's one, or in Singapore, the Southeast Asia haze crisis. That's one issue that I really care about, that we've been covering heavily. So that's kind of a summary of who we are and who I am. Like I said, our audience, we're up to 4 million unique visitors per month. And we're beginning to measure our total reach across all platforms, which I think in this platform agnostic world, and with social media becoming so dominant, is a better way of measuring your true reach. There are a lot of people that interact with us and watch our videos or view our Facebook posts or our tweets or our Instagrams or whatever that don't actually visit the website. We would prefer them to visit the website, of course, but very much inspired by media companies like BuzzFeed, we're measuring our total reach. And so what we do to measure that is basically add up a few different things: our website traffic, our Facebook unique reach, our YouTube views, and our Twitter impressions. And we could add some other things in there like Instagram, but Instagram is very hard to measure your reach within it. Google Plus, let's say, but nobody uses Google Plus, so it doesn't really matter. But so all of those combined on our biggest months, we estimate we reach up to 15 million people. And so we're hoping to continue growing that. Since we're talking about journalism and entrepreneurship, what I thought I'd do is talk about journalism first and then talk about entrepreneurship. And I think, again, feel free to interrupt me at any time and ask questions. So in terms of journalism and our journalistic philosophy at Coconuts Media, first of all, in terms of our local city websites, it's very much about being a resource to know everything that's happening in your city, which is kind of one of our mottos. What's happening in your city? What's happening in Bangkok? What's happening in Singapore? What's happening in Hong Kong? So we want to be covering everything from cupcake shop openings to murders to typhoons to concerts, and really we don't have any things that we don't cover as long as it's happening within that city. So what we really do try and cut off as our scope is things that are not happening in our city. So if it's in Chiang Mai, if it's in Johor, if it's in Shenzhen or mainland China, yeah, come on in. We kind of, on principle, don't want to be covering that because we want to be a local city news and lifestyle resource. We stray from that a little bit. We stray from that for really good stories. We stray from that especially for exclusive, really good stories, and for feature stories. Let's say if we have an exclusive story about something happening in Chiang Mai or even in, let's say, Cambodia, we might occasionally do it. But that's not really our mission. We want to be a local city resource. About half of what we do is news, and that's definitely one of our most popular segment of written content that we do. And we divide our written content into two main types for our journalists, for our editors and writers. The first we call NAB, is news aggregated viral. And the unifying factor here is that oftentimes it's not totally original. It's aggregated, it's curated, it's sourced from other places. News-wise, it could come from information that was published in another news outlet. The Bangkok Post reported this. When that's the case, we always credit, we always link. We've never had a complaint about this in our existence, because we very clearly change everything. We do things in our own style, and we credit and link. The aggregated aspect is fully reprinting stories verbatim, and that's AFP. We have a subscription AFP, writers, and our content partners. So, for example, here in Singapore, I think we don't have many actually. Money Smart, which is a blog in Bangkok. We have the Phuket News. We share content with them, and so the aggregated aspect is simply content sharing and reprinting an article in full. And then the viral aspect is stuff that we could almost rename it social media. It's stuff that comes generally from social media. Facebook videos, a dog on a motorbike, a photo of a young girl doing something that went viral. In Hong Kong, it's oftentimes people defecating or urinating in public that's going viral. So that type of stuff that is sourced from social media is what we kind of categorize as viral. Yeah, we take that, we embed it, we write stories about that, and that's probably one of our most popular segments. Again, with it being within the cities that we operate in. Then the other type of content, when we divide our content into two main types, is original content. And that's very simply totally original content. Generally, these are feature stories, food stories, lifestyle stories, and if I had to estimate the balance between NAB and original, I'd say it's 50-50. And ideally, we'd like to do totally original content, although we still always would want to source from social media. But we have limited resources. In each city, we have 1 or 2 editors. Those editors are expected to do 10 to 20 stories per day. So we really put out a lot of content. And I think that is hugely important for reaching a big audience. If you want to reach a big audience, you have to put out a lot of content. Very simply, with web publishing, the more stuff you publish, the more traffic you get. It's a very simple 1-to-1 ratio. So this can be done. The other side of the coin is it's overdone. You can be a content farm and putting out 1,000 pieces of stories per day. BuzzFeed supposedly does 300 stories per day, which is insane. So the most, probably if you see a BuzzFeed story every day, which probably a lot of us do in your feed, that's the 1 out of 300 that they published that you saw. So that's one of the strategies of BuzzFeed that has allowed them to drive so much traffic. We don't do that much, but actually we do about 100 pieces of content per day. But that's on 10 sites. So we say 10 to 20 pieces of content per day. So with 1 to 2 people we don't have, and our limited resources, we're not able to have a team of, we would love to have 10 people in every city. So that's why we're still aggregating and curating. But ideally, and I think as we hopefully are able to raise more money and are able to earn more money and spend more money, we would love to be doing nearly all original content. So yeah, in terms of our original content, features, like I said, some of the features that we've done that have been popular. We did a series on street children in Bangkok that was very popular. Actually, we got like a SOPA honorable mention for that. We did a series, no, it was just a one-part story here in Singapore about the Yangtze Cinema, which is a softcore porn cinema on the other side of Pearl's Hill, which is closing down. So it's a very poignant, actually, an interesting long form, about 2,000 or 3,000 word story about this softcore porn cinema that had been around for about 30 years that was now closing. It was kind of representative of things that are changing in Singapore. It's going to be knocked down and replaced with a mall, unsurprisingly. So with our features and our original stuff, we're really trying to find stories that are untold. And I think one of the most important factors are that it's exclusive and it's something new, because already with our NAV stuff, we're doing stuff that is sourced from other places. So we really want to make sure with our original stories that there's something that's hopefully not been told, that's an original scoop. Yeah, in terms of our journalistic philosophy and some of the guidelines I give to our editors, first of all, we have about a 30-page editor's guide that really goes through a lot of different aspects and guidelines. One of the things that we hope defines us, and that I think has been a big part of our success so far, is our voice. And I think as we've grown, I've become more comfortable with talking about our voice as being a key to who we are. It's kind of an intangible factor. It's like, oh, why are you special? Oh, because you have a great voice. And so what does that even mean? But I think, yeah, we want to have a unique voice in everything that we do. And we want to have somewhat of a unified voice, while also allowing all of our writers to let their own voice shine through. And so we really encourage our writers to be themselves, speak in the way that they do, write in the way that they do, let their voice shine through. But we do have some overall company-wide guidelines as to how we write. And one of the main taglines that we have is snarky but compassionate, which I think kind of sums up what we want our voice to be, which is that we do want to be sarcastic. We do want to be witty. We do want to be snarky. We do want to be controversial. We might not have a problem with offending people depending upon the situation, but we don't want to be blasé and heartless and cruel, because it's very easy to go from being sarcastic and witty and snarky to like attacking in a way that is not okay, basically. And so we want to be snarky, but we want to be compassionate. And so we do also often write about bad things that have happened, crime and suicide and people dying and terrible things. And so in those situations, we want to not be snarky and keep it very straightforward and respectful. So I think there's a balance that we're constantly trying to strike between being witty, being snarky, and also having compassion.
As you get bigger, you find it harder to control, because you're taking on people in different cities, and they might overstep the mark.
Yeah.
How do you tackle that?
Definitely. It definitely is harder to control as we get bigger. I think one of the very biggest factors is that editor's guide that I really say, read this, and we talk about the voice. We've had staff retreats where we talk about that. It's kind of a constant re-drilling and saying, remember, be compassionate, and constant, we might have to give feedback and say, this is not okay. And that happens semi-regularly, that we do a story that we say, that wasn't respectful, but actually, our writers get better and better at it. And hopefully we're hiring people that understand it, because it's hard to teach, it's just something that hopefully you'll understand intrinsically. But in the day-to-day drive, when you're trying to do 20 stories per day, I think that's part of some factor that can lead to writing something that might have been better considered. And so that's a great question, and it is more difficult as we grow, and also into different languages, which I don't understand.
And the culture.
Yeah. But again, we just come back to having those guidelines and offering feedback as they are doing it. But yeah, I think that question brings up another thing that might be worth talking about, which is our corrections policy and our editorial ethics policy. And so with online publishing, obviously it's very easy to change anything, and oh, you made an error, you change it, and in theory no one would know about it, but actually that's very much not the case. And in the age of screenshots, that's not the case at all, and you're just going to be caught. And in our sites that have the bigger audience, we are constantly, everything we do is extremely scrutinized. So regarding our corrections and ethics policy, we have, and we're implementing this further right now because we didn't have much of a corrections policy before. If we change anything beyond a very minor typo, we put a correction or an editor's note. And if we, you know, our policy is that if we catch something ourselves and it's a minor typo that doesn't change the meaning of the story, we'll change it without a correction. We spelled a name wrong, we put a number wrong, there's a grammatical error, we'll fix it. But anything beyond that, and if it's ever pointed out to us by a reader, an email, on Facebook, a tweet, we put a correction. And I would much rather put that correction than ever compromise our integrity as to what we're doing. And so we say correction, we spelled this guy's name wrong, it is spelled this way. He is not, contrary to our earlier report, he was not Australian, he is American. So it's very important to me that we're always very transparent with that. And I think that we're going to start, once we have definitely defined our corrections policy, which is tough because there's so many gray areas, we're going to put that up on our website in a certain place and make that clear. Another thing we do is editor's notes, which are when it's not really a correction, but something has been clarified and the story has been changed. We put an editor's note to explain that. So yeah, our editors in teams of 1 or 2 for each city website work together, putting out 10 to 20 stories per day. There's that 50% mixture roughly of NAV type stuff, what we call it, the news aggregated viral, which is oftentimes really pumped out in the morning. All the news comes through, and then the 50% features, lifestyle, restaurant reviews, etc. And that formula we found has been very successful in driving traffic to our site. Maybe just to speak quickly about social media and how we drive traffic to our site. First of all, social media is the most important way that we do that. Second of all, Facebook is by far the most important aspect of social media. Facebook drives about 45% of our traffic overall, and that's a higher percentage than I would like. I don't like to depend on Facebook that heavily, but it is what it is, and it's kind of like crack. You can't wean yourself from it once you've started driving traffic with it. But no, we are working on that, and we're really working on trying to lower that percentage that is driven from Facebook and rise other percentages. So Facebook, we're posting every story on Facebook. We're reposting every story on Facebook. Every single Coconuts entity has its own Facebook page. And there's a lot of strategy with Facebook. Facebook is constantly changing its algorithm, as you all know. Stuff that worked 6 months ago doesn't work as well anymore. Right now, everyone knows about the reactions buttons, and it's going to be really interesting to see how those affect the performance of your posts, whether if you get, does a love matter more than a like? Is an angry face like a negative factor to the performance of your post? Or if you get 1 million angry faces, that make it perform better? So yeah, Facebook is an entirely its own beast that we could spend an entire session talking about. So I won't talk too much about Facebook other than to say that it is the most important traffic driver for us, and that we're constantly trying to adapt what we're doing, which is possibly the most important thing about Facebook, is just to be constantly keeping up with the changes in the algorithms and what's working. And that's what we're doing to drive traffic as much as possible. Besides Facebook, Twitter is the second most important social media platform. I just met with the Twitter media rep based here in Singapore and had a really interesting chat with her this week. Unfortunately, Twitter only drives like 1 to 2%. So it's 45% versus 1 to 2%. So you can guess how much we spend thinking about Facebook versus Twitter. But again, I would really love to drive more traffic from Twitter. And I think after meeting with this lady, I have a lot more ideas, and we're gonna be trying some new things on Twitter because we don't, again, I'll just keep saying, we don't want to depend so much on Facebook. Outside of social media, we get a lot of direct traffic, which is great. People, I think about 20% people come to our site. They're what's that? Oh yeah, so yeah, old school people. They type in the URL, they land on the homepage, they browse around. That is a healthy percentage. I think 20, I think it's more than 20% actually. It might be like 30% come directly to our site. That could also be email sharing, and we think more and more it could be WhatsApp sharing. And we have a WhatsApp button on our mobile site. It's very, we've done a lot of surveying of our audience, and WhatsApp is definitely the biggest chatting app and one of the most widely used platforms up there with Facebook. I think I saw in Hong Kong, for example, WhatsApp had a higher amount of people who answered our survey who said they used WhatsApp than Facebook. So that was pretty interesting to see. WhatsApp obviously doesn't have built-in functionalities for media companies to use it the way Facebook does. And so you're kind of hacking WhatsApp, but you can create a WhatsApp button on your site. I don't know if you saw, but New York Times and some other media outlets have experimented with using WhatsApp in ways that are closer to Facebook, for example, but the functionalities, again, are not there. So you actually have to add their phone number, and then they'll send out mass WhatsApps. So we were thinking about experimenting with that. But anyway, yeah, about 30% of our traffic, I think, is direct. And then about 20% is Google organic search. And that's a segment that I think could be growing. Today, social media is basically more important than SEO. I think SEO has diminished in importance as a way to drive traffic to your site. We are a content farm in some ways, naturally. I mean, not a content farm, that's actually a bad way to put it, but we put out tons of content. So we're a great SEO site naturally. You know, if you have a site that for a tire company, they don't put it out in the content. So they're gonna hire someone to create a blog, and they're gonna create content. It's probably gonna be something like a post per day or a post per week to drive traffic. We do that naturally, and we put out over 100 pieces of content per day. But yeah, we don't spend a ton of time working on or thinking about SEO. We basically just try and put in some very basic practices, put in a meta tag tool. I don't know how much you guys have researched SEO, but title and description, as far as I know, is what's most important. And beyond putting an SEO-friendly title and description, we don't do much more than that.
I was sorry for one
Sure.
moment because
No.
our live stream is gonna end in about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So why don't we just talk about more about the entrepreneurship sides, because
Sure.
Actually that would be very interesting for many of you.
Yeah.
I think I should just like sit behind the water coolers.
Sure, sure.
Okay, by the way, my name is Mike. I'm a TV reporter and a technology correspondent for Voice TV, a local TV station based in Bangkok, Thailand. And you know, I think for many of you, and some of you might be interested to start startups.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, I think these days when you're talking about startups, you're thinking about tech startups, those kind of stuff that need to require a lot of funding or investment from venture capitals. Is it similar to those types of what is your business model?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump over to the entrepreneurship side and the business side. Our business model, first of all, we're raising money right now. So I'm very much in this mode, and I can talk about this very fluidly, and I've been talking to a lot of people about this. Thank you for asking. Our business model is this. We produce content, and we amplify that content with marketing. So we do a little bit of paid marketing. We do all the things that I just said in order to drive additional traffic to our site. And we don't begin doing any sort of sales until we feel that we have hit a critical mass. Because we think that before that, there's just no point. Nobody's gonna buy advertising on a site that they've never heard of, right? So once we have produced enough content, existed for long enough, spent money on marketing, and built the site up to where we think we're at a critical mass level, which is a little bit indefinable. There's no amount of traffic that it is. It's just that point, which we have reached in Bangkok, I think, where people are coming to you and have heard of you, that you can begin selling advertising. So advertising is our #1 revenue stream, but actually what I would categorize within advertising that is actually our #1 revenue stream is sponsored content. And so that's where we work with brands and agencies and advertisers to create content that is sponsored by them, but that hopefully meets the criteria of satisfying 3 different parties, which is the advertiser, our audience, and ourselves. It's difficult to do that. It's difficult to please those 3 parties, and so we say 2 out of 3 isn't bad. The brand wants what it wants. It wants to might maybe sell muffins or bikes or whatever they're selling, beer. Our audience wants what it wants. It wants great, funny, entertaining, usable, shareable content. And we want what we want, which is not to sell out our integrity and to create content that, that our audience likes. That matters to us. And meeting those 3 different interests is difficult, like I said. But usually we say we aim for 2 out of 3. And so sponsored content is definitely what we're seeing the most interest from when we talk to advertising agencies, when we talk to brands. In the best case scenario, it can be really, really cool. And our biggest client is Singha Beer in Thailand. For them, what we've done is created an entire microsite about the Thai islands. And so that was their criteria. They said, we want to focus on the Thai islands, and our target audience is expats and people from around Asia and the world who want to travel to Thailand. So it was actually a perfect audience for us, because if they said, we want to target Thai people, which they do with other marketing, this was their expat and international marketing division, then we would have said, oh, we're not as strong there. They probably wouldn't have asked us. That's one of the reasons why we started a Thai site, is to get a bigger Thai and local audience.
So, so when it comes to, asking, advertisers for the money, and, maybe asking investors, this might be very useful. So, what are the questions that they usually ask you, and what did you respond to them?
So for advertisers, it's very specific questions about your audience, usually. Usually they know what you can do content-wise because they've seen your writing, they've seen your videos, and they like it, and that's hopefully why you're talking to them. But what they might not know is the very specific demographics of your audience. So usually with advertisers, that's the #1 thing that we are working on, presenting to them is the various aspects of our audience, and also the reach of the campaign, because that's #1. 1, who is your audience? 2, how much of them are we going to reach? Are we going to reach 1 million people? Are we going to reach 5 million people? And are those people Thai, or are they expats, or are they in Singapore? Are they Singaporeans? Are they people in the UK? Are they Hong Kong Chinese 34 to 44-year-old mothers who are likely to buy a stroller or something like that? Obviously, they get very, very specific. Those are the main questions we're constantly discussing with advertisers, as well as the price, of course. So usually our sales strategy and our sales philosophy is to go to them and see what their objectives are and who they're trying to reach. We do 5 main different types of things to produce revenue: sponsored content, advertising. We do creative services, where we create videos or writing or web design. We license our original content, which is kind of totally separate. And then the 5th, which we're just beginning to look into, is events. But usually when we're talking to a brand, licensing, like I said, is totally different. Those 4 can be packaged together in some sort of campaign. We want to be doing something that fits all their needs and that hopefully achieves their objectives. So it's like, okay, we want people to download our app, which is actually one of the worst briefs we could get, because if they want to do that, they should just do Facebook advertising or Google AdWords and get people to click links and download their app. But if that was their objective, we might say, okay, banner ads would be best for you, not sponsored content. It's not, sponsored content is better for raising awareness and affinity. So every brief is different. And yeah, those are the questions that we're often answering. For investors, whole different set of considerations, whole different set of questions. I think they often want to know, well, if you've done any research into like the really startup pitching 101, it's like, what problem are you solving? And that's almost become a cliche, but it's like, what's the problem and how are you solving it? So you'll see a lot of pitch decks if you look at startup pitch decks. Here's the problem. Hotels are too expensive and they don't give you this local experience. You can see Airbnb's pitch deck. Solution, people can rent out their home and do Airbnb. So that's a question we're often asked. I think very quickly with investors, it becomes very much about money and what's your revenue. And so how much do you earn? How do you earn it? And why is your revenue going to grow? Another question that investors love to ask is, why is your business defensible? This is a very tough question and very, we can now answer that question very well. But it's a difficult question, and it's kind of like, why is any business defensible? No business is actually defensible. Any business can be disrupted, but it's a question they love to ask. Yeah. Because
the thing is, I've known several investors, several venture capitals that has said that at this time of this decade, investing in media startups should be something that they have to consider very, very, they have to be very cautious about. Yeah. About investing in media startups. So what would you tell them that that you have a potential growth, that that you should do media startups instead of doing something else? Yeah. So first of all, we've spoken to a lot of VCs and we've raised a little bit of money from VCs, but VCs are not the right target investor for us because and tech investors generally are not the right investor for us. In a lot of ways, we consider ourselves like a traditional media company. We're not a tech company. We've happened to publish on a website and more on social media, on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. But in a lot of ways, our business model is that of not in a lot of ways it is. It's exactly that of a traditional media company. We create content, we grow our audience, then we sell advertising, and in this case, sponsored content to our audience. So we found that with tech VCs, they're oftentimes asking these questions they love to ask, like, what's your rate of return? What is your cost per user acquisition? And it doesn't apply to us, actually, and it shows that they don't understand media because we don't make money off our users. We make money off advertisers. So we found, and this is something we learned, we talked to a bunch of them and had these meetings that were not so great. Although they were always interested, but they're like, media, I don't like media, there's no potential there. So we talked to media investors, and media investors understand media. They don't need any hand holding to understand what our concept is. They like the fact that we have a voice, and I think more and more I've become comfortable with saying that if you don't like our content, if you don't like what we're doing, if you don't understand that, then you're not going to be a good investor in us. And how would you find them? How would you find, for example, if I want to start a media startup today, how can I find the media investors, and how can I find the the first advertiser that would be interested in the product? In terms of media investors, well, you got to just look up every big media company and try and talk to them and meet people there. And it's very much a relationship-based search to meet more and more people and meet the right people within these companies. I think VCs are even more actually easy to find. They're online. You can find them. You can look at a website like AAJA, and they have their email and contact them. But the media investors are harder to access because they're oftentimes at these big media companies,
Or there's another type of media investor, which is private equity firms, which are also hard to access and might be based in Hong Kong or New York, and specialize in media. And that's kind of a small world as well, but they have lots and lots of money. In terms of advertising, very much it's the advertising business. And I don't know if any of you have ever worked or do work in advertising. I think you work in advertising, right? It's very much also relationship driven, and it's about networking, and there's a lot of lunches and dinners and socializing, and it's very relationship driven. And so I don't do that as much myself per se. It's the salespeople that do that. In Thailand, for example, where we're doing not the majority, but most of our biggest segment of sales, we have a team of 3 salespeople, and they now know everybody. They've been doing it for 2 years, and so they know people at Starcom, the big agency. They know people at Mindshare. They know people at Singha Beer, which is our biggest advertiser there. And for example, with Singha Beer is a great example of what we hope to do more of, which is that we started with I think probably 1 sponsored post, and then we did a series of sponsored posts, and then we did a video series. They sponsored a food video series that was very popular, and then we finally were able to get them to spend this larger amount of money on a 6-month deal to do this microsite, and ultimately we're hoping to renew that for a 2-year deal.
Okay, so we probably because it's already 12, and I would like to get a chance for everybody to ask a question. So, because before we end the streaming, so we have Wendy.
Yeah.
You know, she's in Beijing right now. And Wendy, do you have any questions for Byron? Her microphone's on mute right now. I don't know if she could. Wendy, can you hear us? Can you hear us?
She frozen or she's still there?
It's kind of frozen.
Yeah, it's kind of
frozen.
frozen. Anyway, so if you have any questions, just jump in. Okay, do you have any questions for Byron?
Yes. Sorry, my internet is not stable.
Okay, but we can hear you very well.
I don't know if this has already been addressed.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's on VPN. That's to let you know. Yeah.
The name out there when you first.
Could you type a question?
Let me see if I could. Yep. What? This feature is disabled. What was that?
For typing.
Does anyone have any questions? Maybe Byron can answer.
Okay.
So when you started your team, I think it was just you to begin with, but how did your team grow? Because obviously you had to handle all these things yourself.
Yeah, so for the first year it was just me, with the help of some freelancers, and we didn't do any business at that point. We were just trying to grow our audience, and like I said, that's been part of our strategy. As we've grown, absolutely, we now have 40 people who work at Coconuts across Asia, and we've kind of divided into a couple different main areas, which are editorial, all the writers who do the actual posts of the websites, Coconuts TV, which is all the video producers and video considerations, sales of sponsored content advertising, revenue, tech, we have a couple developers, designers who do our website, and admin. Marketing and executive is done by everybody. We don't have any specific marketers. I lead our marketing, our CFO does a lot of marketing, our editors, our marketers naturally, they do everything on social media. So that's actually one interesting thing. We don't have any marketing department. Everyone is a marketer. And yeah, as much as possible, I try to delegate, and that's something that I am very much wrestling with and putting systems in place for now is the management of the company. I do a lot of everything, and a lot of people do a lot of everything across those different segments. So maybe that's one thing that I am still learning a lot about and trying to implement systems of management, because it becomes overwhelming to do everything, and there is a lot of stuff going on. For example, right now we're doing a lot of sales, so which is great. We're doing a lot of sales of sponsored content. We're having to create that sponsored content. The process of creating the sponsored content is very, it can be time consuming. It depends on the client. There's a lot of client interaction. We don't like that. We don't like this. Change this. With video, that becomes very labor intensive to make editing video. So we're kind of balls to the wall, overwhelmed with the amount of sponsored content and sales that we're doing. So actually, I've just hired a commercial director to do that because that's not my, first of all, I don't love it. I like the editorial side of things. I don't like clients saying, I'm not good at saying, oh, well, sure, I'd love to change that for you. Yeah, we're hiring a commercial director to lead our sales and production of sponsored content. We need to hire more sponsored content editors, writers, and project managers to do this content. So yeah, that's an example of something where I'm hoping to really delegate and create a system for us to use to help them produce sponsored content. But right now, it's more freewheeling and crazy and overwhelming to be doing all this stuff.
So Wendy got a question on our chat. So she said, how did you get, how did you first get Coconut's media brand name out there?
Sure. Very much social media and very much Facebook. Actually, that is definitely one of the main, or one of the ideas, one of the reasons I thought Coconuts could do well in Bangkok when I started in 2011 was that all the other media outlets were so poor at social media. Bangkok Post, Nation, BK Magazine, which I would say is one of our biggest competitors. I remember BK Magazine had a Facebook account that was like a personal account, and they just had friends. That's how they didn't have a page.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah. And then the Bangkok Post didn't really have a Facebook page. They had like a bunch of Facebook pages that didn't look professional, and so they basically didn't have a Facebook presence. Maybe like a few different people at the company that started Facebook pages uncoordinated. So I was like, oh my God, there's a market here for someone who is good at Facebook and can be putting content on Facebook. And yeah, and they weren't even very website oriented, they were so print oriented. So yeah, created content and put it all on Facebook. Everything was on Facebook, and we grew organically on Facebook because I think people said, oh, like, I live in Bangkok, I want to know what's happening. And this site is putting 5 to 10 to 15 stories per day telling me what's happening. And people were online, and I think in 2011, we were all online, obviously, but the other media had not caught up. So I think that possibly allowed us to grow faster than we might have otherwise.
Yeah, I think the same could be said about many of the big cities in Asia.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Taiwan's exactly the same.
Yeah.
The English language newspapers have terrible web presence. Their websites were really old-fashioned and not user-friendly. They had no social media whatsoever.
Yeah.
And that's still just pretty much the case.
Yeah. I've watched in every city, because I have been studying all these cities probably since around 2011, 2012. The web presence and the social media presence just get way better in all of them, but it's still not great. Here, for example, here there's been a huge boom, and I wish there was less competition, but I think it's good also. We've seen lots of websites start, like Mothership and Vulcan Post and Smart Local, and they are very web savvy. We've seen outlets like the Straits Times improve their website and become much more web savvy and social media savvy. So, but yeah, in Manila and Jakarta, well, every market is different, but yeah, there was a market I saw for doing something online that's very social media oriented, and that was the #1 way we grew our audience at the beginning.
Any question? Yes.
What kind of tools do you use to understand the demographics of your audience?
Great question. So we use, first of all, Google Analytics is the #1 thing. Google Analytics is getting better and better at telling you demographic information. You can know age, gender, interests. You can know what percentage is interested in travel or education. So we've used a lot of different services over the years, but actually it's become more and more, we always come back to Google Analytics. We used, if you've heard of Effective Measure, for a year, and we had to pay, you know, it's fairly expensive by our standards, maybe $1,000 a month. And Effective Measure supposedly gives you better demographic data. And the way that they do it actually is through a couple different methods, including surveying. They have like panel surveys. But yeah, we found that we didn't need it. We didn't need to pay for it. Google Analytics was enough. There's also ComScore, as you probably know, but they are very, very, sitting here, working ComScore. ComScore is very US oriented, very desktop oriented, so that basically means nothing to us because 60% of our traffic is mobile, actually about 70% mobile plus tablet. And like, actually we have a big amount from the US, maybe 10 to 20%, but yeah, if you're only measuring desktop traffic in the US, although don't quote me on that because I know they have an office here, so they must be able to measure.
It's recording.
Yeah, let me caveat by saying they must be improving that. But for example, ComScore in the US, when people measure ComScore, it's only US desktop traffic. So that's not hugely important. So we also survey directly. And that's a #1 way to find out things that Google Analytics can't tell us, like income level, more specific interests. We ask them how many credit cards they have. Surveying is very, obviously there's a lot of theory that goes into that, and we do it once per year. We use SurveyMonkey. Basically, the better prize we offer, the more stuff we can ask, you know? So one year in Bangkok, actually, yeah, we got the most survey respondents in Bangkok about 2 years ago because we were giving away a Vespa, a bike. And so we got about 1,500 respondents. So it was a very good sample size, and that's really valid. This year in our most recent surveys, I think we got a couple hundred in each city. So I think that's, maybe you know more about surveying than me, but we use that. We think that's good enough. Yeah.
So I just got a question. So do you have to pay for this, the Google Analytics, or is it free?
Free.
And,
Google Analytics is totally free.
Yeah, and also, you know, just to let you know, Google is going to have one of the sessions at our conference.
Yeah.
Our annual conference in Seoul, the AAJA. So because Google is our main sponsor. So if you want to learn more about these tools, join us as at the conference in May. Yeah, in Freetown. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just ask what's your methodology for creating your content strategy.
So at the higher level, it's kind of what I described about the difference between curated NAV content and original content. Like I said, we look to do 10 to 20 posts per day, ideally with 2 editors per city. Oftentimes, in some of our cities, in Singapore, we've had 1 editor for about a year. We had a difficulty hiring a second editor, but we just hired one. And so I think we're gonna see, it's gonna be easier to do 10 to 20 stories. That's what we aim to do per site, per day. We're beginning to implement Trello, which is a project management tool to assign stories, but that's not assigned or implemented everywhere. And it's a little bit freewheeling. I mean, our editors sit together, hopefully, most of the time. In some places, they're not in the same place, like Jakarta, they work remotely, so they're on Skype. But yeah, they're just talking all day and saying, hey, you should do a story on what happened in Jakarta. I want to say the bombing, but the bombing, okay, you're gonna cover this, I'm gonna cover this aspect, you're gonna cover this aspect. And it's very freewheeling and very much autonomous and controlled on their level. Like we hire what I hope are good editors and we just let them work. I'm not involved with what they do every day. We have an editorial director who's based here in Singapore, and he really, you know, like I said, tries to put in place our guidelines and our structures and our feedback. But other than that, we just let them go. They produce content all day.
Yeah, because you were mentioning, I think earlier that 50% of your content you try to go for viral.
Yeah.
So how do you make sure that 50% goes viral?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's not 50% that we're hoping to go viral. 50% is the NAV content, news aggregated viral, meaning it's sourced from somewhere else.
Okay.
And we include viral in that. But actually, something original could go viral. And so it's kind of
Sorry.
semantics, but yeah. In terms of stuff going viral, great question, and obviously it's the #1 goal of kind of a lot of activities media-wise on online, and there's kind of almost a joke, and we tell our salespeople, like, everyone's just like, oh yeah, can we just buy your cheapest product and make it go viral? You know, so yeah, okay, that's expensive. Okay, cheapest sponsored post, yeah, can you just make that and make that go viral? Thanks. So making stuff go viral is hard. Obviously, we love it when stuff goes viral, but again, it's like crap. Like I say, it's a very, if you're just trying to make everything go viral, it's unhealthy for your mental health, first of all, and it's not going to achieve what we want to do, which is be a good resource for our city website. And there are stories that have no viral potential. There is a concert tomorrow of maybe, let's say, not a huge band, but that has use, or this road is going to be closed tomorrow, or the fares on the MRT have gone up 10 cents. These are stories that don't have viral potential, but that are important and that we do want to do. That being said, we absolutely do like to do stories that go viral. There is strategy that goes into that. I think the #1 factor is just exclusivity, I think, and big news. When you have an exclusive story on something that's you know there's a lot of interest in, that's what oftentimes goes viral. Very much, of course, sex and violence related stuff can go viral. Cats go viral. Dog stuff goes viral. Animals always have good viral potential. But when I think about our biggest viral stories ever, they're usually something that was just a really good scoop, and something that's incendiary or just the type of thing that has a wow factor. And so, for example, one of our biggest stories ever was we were first to report on C.Y. Leung's daughter, the Hong Kong chief executive's daughter, made statements on Facebook that were basically said on her public Facebook account. She said, Hong Kong taxpayers pay for my bags and shoes, and you guys are scum, and get a job, blah, blah, blah. We did a story on that. That's an example of a news aggregated viral story. We screenshotted her post, we wrote it up, and we said, wow, look at this. We actually kept our judgment pretty tame because what she said was so incendiary and crazy viral. It was on Hong Kong message boards, everyone was sharing it. It ended up getting picked up by New York Post, Gawker, all these international news outlets, and even Jon Stewart on The Daily Show referred to it, but he didn't mention us, and it was covered everywhere already. But that being the first scoop of this very incendiary story was something that went viral. Other things, I don't know if you've heard about the baby doll trend in Thailand. The trend of having dolls that supposedly house souls of people. Yeah. So we were one of the first to report on those in English, and that had viral potential. So it's stuff like that that has the most, that really goes the most viral when we're actually doing an original exclusive scoop on something great. But then also there's stuff like just a video of otters doing something, or a crash, or that stuff will go viral too.
Do you have a policy for purchasing viral content from people, or a tips line for people who send stuff? We
don't, but that's something I've considered a lot. I know Apple Daily does that a lot in Hong Kong, for example. There was always actually an original idea that I wanted to have as being part of, well, not an original idea, but part of the original idea of Coconuts was having user-generated content be a huge part of our source of information. But it's been difficult to get user-generated content, maybe because we need to pay for it. So that's one thing I've considered.
Another problem that Apple Daily experienced was that people would fake stuff just to get the money.
Yeah.
You know, and you couldn't verify whether this footage was authentic or.
Yeah.
It was a big scandal.
Yeah, really. So we kind of don't get it submitted to us. We just find it ourselves on the internet, and that's kind of the viral aspect of the reporting from social media aspect. Okay.
You mentioned earlier that you develop a great answer for anyone who says, who asks why is your business defensible?
Yeah,
So
I was hoping nobody would ask.
can you read it out in minutes?
So, we think our business is defensible because first of all, there is no one else who has a regional presence like we do. There's no one else who is in all of the markets that we're in. And so we hope that we have a first mover advantage as well in markets like Myanmar and Indonesia. And also, actually what the number one reason I say, which again I've become more comfortable saying, is our voice. We think we have a great voice, and it's very tough to quantify that or qualify that in business terms, but we think that that is something that differentiates ourselves, that cannot be emulated, and that is defensible, and that we have a great voice. Yeah.
By the way, we have to end the streaming right now because
Sure.
it's been like almost it's been like 1 hour and about 50 minutes on the streaming at this moment. So any other questions will be you can ask Byron at any time. But for Wendy, thank you for your questions, and I'll pass the messages that you told Byron, and I'll let him know. So thank you, and I'll see you in Seoul maybe in May, hopefully. All right, have a good trip.
Bye, Wendy.
Yeah.